The video game industry. What was once thought to be a tiny industry only for kids,
Happy holidays from Atari,
has now become one of the largest and fastest growing industries in the world. As of 2019, the video game industry is valued at well over $100 billion and is bigger than both the film industry and music industry combined. But the gaming business is not filled with 100 different gaming companies, each jockeying for position in the industry. In reality, only a handful of companies are responsible for nearly all of the revenue that is produced from video games. And one of these companies is still pretty much owned by one single person. This is the story about how one man changed video games forever and created a titan of the video game industry. This is the story of Epic Games. Potomac, Maryland, 1989. A 19-year-old named Tim Sweeney was a busy mechanical engineering student at the University of Maryland. On weekends, Tim would travel back to his parents' house in Potomac, Maryland to keep in touch with both his family and his IBM personal computer. On one of these weekends, he decided to open up his own personal computer consultation business, where he would help customers with any of their computer problems. He decided to call this new business Potomac Computer Systems, named after his hometown. However, after more than a year of very little success, he decided to shut down the company and focus his weekends on something else. Tim always knew he wanted to do something revolving around computers, so he ended up deciding that he would try to create a video game. However, there was a problem. Even though Tim was pretty much an expert with computers and computer programming, there wasn't a real roadmap or instruction manual on how to create video games at the time, nor were there any game engines to help him start programming his first game. So Tim Sweeney ended up creating his own text editor in order to help him program his first game from scratch. But then a light bulb went off. What if he just made a video game out of the text editor itself? So that's what he did. The initial text editor that Tim made ended up becoming a game called ZZT. It was an action-adventure puzzle game that was released for MS-DOS in October of 1991. The game took 9 months to develop, and when it was released, it was met with some initial success. However, this was not necessarily because of the game itself. You see, the game ZZT was the first video game that was ever developed using object-oriented programming, which made it very easy for other programmers to change the game, or as it is known today, mod the game. So inadvertently, Tim Sweeney's text editor had become the first easily moddable game, where normal computer users could create their own game within a game. Soon, ZZT started making Sweeney over $100 a day. That is when he decided to make video game development his full-time career. He renamed Potomac Computer Systems to Epic Mega Games in order to try to have a standout name in the video game industry. At the time, there were only a few companies that were making video games, like Apogee Software and ID Software. These companies had just recently released their massive hit games like Duke Nukem and Wolfenstein 3D, so Tim Sweeney had his work cut out for him. Initially, Tim brought on a handful of people to help him grow the company, one of which was Mark Rain, who according to Tim was vital to the initial growth of Epic Games because of the business deals he was able to bring in early on in the company's history. By the end of its first year, Epic Mega Games had 20 employees and had produced 6 games. And by the end of the second year, they had 30 employees and produced 9 more games. The company was growing fairly quickly, yet their game-changing product was yet to be released. In 1995, Sweeney began writing code for a first-person shooter game. However, he began building this game with a brand new idea in mind. He decided to program a game engine that would not only work for his game, but could also work for a wide variety of other future games. That way, this game engine could be licensed out to other game developers to bring in additional revenue for the company. Now, the creation of this game engine was a big risk for Sweeney because building a game engine like this would take years to program, and the engine might not even be that good at the end of it. So by starting this project, he was placing a big bet on himself and his ability to program. And after 3 years of programming, Tim Sweeney's video game called Unreal was released to the world, and so was his game engine that he called Unreal Engine. Within 2 weeks, the game Unreal became the best-selling game in the country and received an overwhelmingly positive reception by gamers. It was described as having revolutionary visuals while at the same time receiving praise for its good plot, atmosphere, and gameplay. Unreal ended up making the company around $60 million throughout its lifetime, and for a few weeks actually competed with StarCraft as the best-selling game in the world. However, this would pale in comparison to what the Unreal Engine would do for the company. The engine that Sweeney spent 3 years programming was praised by nearly everyone in the industry, including competitors such as John Carmack, who was the creator of games like Doom and Quake. And this praise was for a multitude of reasons, like how the engine was able to use textures, its lighting quality, and the ability to export games to nearly every computer and console on the market with just the click of a button. After its release, Unreal Engine started being used by hit games like Deus Ex, the Harry Potter series, the Star Trek games, XCOM, and much more. And because Unreal Engine was taking a small royalty on every game sold that used its engine, Epic Games' revenue started to explode. And because of this massive success, Sweeney began programming the next versions of Unreal Engine that would be suitable for the next generation of game consoles. And this is the point where the gaming industry would change forever. In 2006, Epic Games put all of its focus on making a new gaming franchise. They wanted this game to truly display the power of their newest version of Unreal Engine, so they struck a deal with Microsoft to develop a game specifically for the Xbox 360. Epic wanted this game to be an online multiplayer shooter that young people could play with friends. So that's when they came up with the idea for Gears of War. Immediately after its release, sales for Gears of War broke records as it became the fastest-selling Xbox 360 game to reach 3 million copies sold, and ended up selling almost 6 million copies throughout its lifetime. The combination of its critical reception and its massive sales lured other game developers to the Unreal Engine platform. Within a year of Gears of War's release, another massive game called BioShock was released to the public that used Unreal Engine. And I personally remember playing this game as a kid, and the graphics were so revolutionary and lifelike that it was the first time I couldn't tell the difference between a gameplay scene and a cutscene. And after BioShock, there were a few other games that started using Unreal Engine. Let me know if you've heard of any of them. Mass Effect, Army of Two, Gears of War 2, Mirror's Edge, Rainbow Six Vegas 2, Batman Arkham Asylum, Infinity Blade, Mass Effect 2, Batman Arkham City, DC Universe Online, Gears of War 3, Mortal Kombat, Borderlands 2, Dishonored, Mass Effect 3, Batman Arkham Origins, BioShock Infinite, Injustice Gods Among Us, and Outlast. Unreal Engines 2 and 3 were an overwhelming success that earned Epic Games a $330 million investment from Tencent in 2012, which valued Epic Games at over $700 million. Despite this investment, founder Tim Sweeney still owned well over 50% of the company and maintained nearly full control over its operations. And yes, despite all of the success, the biggest financial windfall was yet to come. As the publishing of Unreal Engine 3 came to an end with games like Batman Arkham Knight, Assassin's Creed Chronicles, Rocket League, and Goat Simulator, a new influx of Unreal Engine 4 games began to be created in 2016, with games like Dead by Daylight, Gears of War 4, Street Fighter V, and Warhammer. The release of Unreal Engine 4 is what finally made Epic Games a billion-dollar company. But there was still one game in development that would take the world by storm. On September 26th of 2017, an online shooter game that was built and developed by Epic Games was released. That game was Fortnite. And as we all know, Fortnite blew up and ended up drawing in over 250 million players worldwide while generating over $2 billion in revenue through microtransactions within the game. And yes, even though a lot of people only know Epic as the game company that produced Fortnite, it actually still makes the vast majority of its money from its other games that use Unreal Engine. I mean, think about this. Soon after Fortnite came out, there were a ton of other popular games that used Unreal Engine, like Ark Survival Evolved, Everspace, Friday the 13th, Injustice 2, Life is Strange, Marvel vs. Capcom, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, Psychonauts, and a ton of other games that I won't get into. And because of the success of both Fortnite and the hundreds of other popular games that use Unreal Engine, Epic Games was able to get the largest investment in history for a video game company at $1.25 billion for less than 8% equity, therefore valuing Epic Games at about $15 billion. And yes, Tim Sweeney still owns over 50% of the company, so he still technically is the sole decision maker and true owner of Epic Games. Today, Tim Sweeney is worth over $7.5 billion, and yet still appears on Unreal Engine live streams and gaming conferences a couple times a year. Today, Epic Games is one of the largest video game developers in the world and is comparable to other giant developers such as EA, Ubisoft, Blizzard, 2K, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. And there may actually be someone that you know that is using Unreal Engine to develop their own game. That person? Well, it's me. I've actually been developing my own open-world RPG game called Attica Origins over the past few months. And if you want to know more about the game and how you can support this channel or the game itself, please subscribe to Attica Games, as I've been posting videos there pretty consistently for the past few months. Anyways, stay tuned for my next business documentary. I really enjoy making these kinds of videos. So please hit that subscribe and like button down below, and I'll see you guys next time.